As we start the new year here in the Lakes area and of course across the great state of Minnesota, it's time to really sit back and reflect on something we voted on in 2010, in my opinion. And what that was the 1% food and beverage tax here for the city of Detroit Lakes. Now, if you need a little recap on how this came about, local government aid had been cut from the city of Detroit Lakes a number of times over a set number of years. I want to say 5 or 6 years in a row. The cumulative effects of those cuts to the city of Detroit Lakes was roughly around $7 million if you add up every year's cuts to how much it actually cost them in the very end. The very last year, in 2009-2010, I know the cut itself was around $900,000. In other words, the city was receiving about half the local government aid it was promised. Now, the city of Detroit Lakes, because it had the public utilities and it also had the liquor fund, was able for the most part weather these LGA cuts. However, it deeply affected some of the city's desires to pursue some of the special projects in town that many of our fathers on the city council feel would be very beneficial to the community at large. For that, they came up with a 1% food and beverage tax, something that I personally was vehemently opposed to, but it went to a vote of the people, and by 47 votes here in Detroit Lakes was passed and approved. Now, the food and beverage tax first began to be collected in April of 2011. And we've got our first numbers now from how the food and beverage tax did and how it was collected. And at least on a positive note, the food and beverage tax appears to be taking in more funding than originally anticipated, which can only be perceived as being a good thing for Detroit Lakes, considering you've got to spend money in town in order for the community to collect that tax here in Detroit Lakes. And to look at how much the taxes collected, we've really got about 19 months worth of data so far. The last 8 months of the 2011 year and the first 11 months of the 2012 year did not have December's tax information ready quite yet, and you can understand with December just wrapping up and ending here why it might take a little bit longer before we get that data. So in the 19 months total from April 2011 until November 30th of 2012, the food and beverage tax collected $537,000 in 19 months. Of that, the city of Detroit Lakes spent $257,000. In 2011, $16,000 was spent to basically set up a department with the Minnesota Department of Revenue in order to collect this money, and another $30,000 was spent to deal with the aquatic invasive species issues on Big and Little Detroit Lake. In 2012, a little over $2,200 was spent on the administrative end, over $40,000 on dealing with lake issues on Big and Little Detroit Lake, and over $168,000 was spent on the new redevelopment and downtown parking area here in Detroit Lakes. And in 2013, the city is anticipating spending $270,000 of this tax money for downtown parking improvements, a bike path, and continued lake maintenance. How much money in each is yet to be decided. Now, the city already has $280,000 in that food and beverage tax fund to cover that amount. So it's doing better than expected. But the city is expected to go for a 1% citywide sales tax now because the food and beverage tax has been so successful, and they still haven't found enough revenue streams to make up the money they feel they've lost. So the city of Detroit Lakes residents has to ask themselves, the food and beverage tax appears to be working. Personally, I haven't noticed it much in my budget month to month and how often I go out to eat. So does that mean the city is ready as residents to support a 1% citywide sales tax? Or is it time to send a message to the city to prioritize their projects a little differently? There's a lot on the plate, but does that to mean our local businesses should substitute as the city's tax collector to get it done?